Welcome again to the Ref Show. Would you believe another good weekend for match officials in the Premier League? Maybe even the best yet, actually, looking at the stats. Only 27 yellow cards across 10 games, just the one red card. We ask on the Ref Show this week, why is it all so right when previously we thought it was so wrong? Mark Lawrenson, we're delighted to welcome to the Ref Show.
Thank you.
We're in distinguished company, Keith, this
Absolutely.
week, aren't we?
Extinguished. No, you're not in distinguished.
Extinguished company, yes. Very, very good line indeed. We better get our verdicts right then, Keith. Let's start with that Chelsea-Stoke game, Anthony Taylor, and the big call. Jack Butland, the Stoke keeper, challenging for the ball. Loic Remy, was he fouled?
No, not in my opinion. I think the referee was spot on. I mean, the goalkeeper's got the right to go for the ball. And in fairness on this occasion, I thought great praise to the player for trying to maintain, if you like, possession of the ball. He jumped over the goalkeeper and lost his balance, still had a shot on goal. I think all too often, this whole area of challenges in and around the penalty area, I get worried about, because I've always had the view that DOGSO, denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, the law itself is flawed. It punishes the player far too much. And so on this occasion...
I'm impressed with DOGSO, Keith. I've never heard that before, so remember that one.
Well, let's talk about that incident.
Don't you think the whole irony of that situation as well is the fact that Mourinho wasn't even there? Yeah. Could you imagine the fuss? Yeah. If he had been? Yeah. It would have, I mean, it would just be all over the back pages of the newspapers, wouldn't it? So I'm with Keith. I think it's absolutely right. And, for once, applaud a footballer for not trying to get a penalty.
Yeah, and do you think the call was right, that it wasn't a penalty?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Not everybody thought that way.
No, well, that's just the way it is. But I wonder if there's, because I was at Liverpool and at the weekend, and did you see how many goals were scored in the Premier League this weekend? Relatively few. I wonder, do you think that's related to yellow and red cards or not, or is there no correlation whatsoever? I don't know. It just seemed very unusual.
It did, didn't it? A very low card count, a low goal count, 27. That's more in line with what you've been preaching, Keith. You worked, when you were in charge, towards an average of 3 per game, didn't you?
I always look, because I think, although I'm not a guy who pushes stats, I had the stats available because I wanted referees to manage. I wanted referees to have personalities, but actually understand their position within the game. They're not at the front of the house. Players are at the front of the house. People pay money to watch the players. And I think there's always that danger in the modern game with television coverage that they all become, if you like, a little bit bigger in the game.
It's all about me.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it's good to see referees this weekend have a bit of courage to apply common sense and not jump behind the book. We see far too many players getting cautioned for technical offences, right? When the referees, if they were proactive managers, would prevent. The quiet word, the word with a captain, the word with a senior player, all those relationships that you would enjoy on a football field would come to the fore. I mean...
Right. We must praise Anthony Taylor, by the way, was the referee at the Stoke-Chelsea game, for getting those right.
But the other thing about that as well, sorry, is that, where was I the other week at Chelsea-Liverpool? And not the booking that everyone thought Lucas should have got, which would have been his second yellow and send-off. But you probably, I don't know whether they showed it on Match of the Day, actually, because I didn't get back to see it at night, but he made 2 tackles in the first half. I think Clattenburg was refereeing, and Clattenburg just went to him. You could see Clattenburg went, 1 more, and you get a yellow. And of course, what happened? 1 more, and he got a yellow. So it's like, if you're a player, you can't kind of say, oh, well, that wasn't particularly bad. What's wrong with you? You just know what the rules are.
In the same spirit, Martin Atkinson with the North London derby, 1 each between Arsenal and Spurs. Mark Halsey was doing ref cam, said it was exceptional, the performance. Again, in a sort of highly charged atmosphere. Good.
I bet it's not got a mention in the newspaper this morning, has it?
The referee?
No, it won't, won't it?
Should he?
Yeah, of course he should. Because, by the way, you get enough grief when you get it wrong. So, yeah, absolutely, totally should be. But I think it's communication on as much as anything. Yeah. If the referee says, you just be careful, or I saw what you did, or whatever, and once you know that he knows, you've got a different psyche as a player.
We're making sure they get mentioned here anyway and praised. There's been lots of criticism here. Before we come on to what's right that was so wrong previously, two younger referees, Craig Pawson, he took charge of Aston Villa, Manchester City, Paul Tierney, West Ham, Everton, two close-fought draws there. Good to see those two apparently developing.
A big challenge for Tierney, young referee.
How old is he, Keith?
He's in his late 20s, I think. Right. But given that, he's a guy who's been thrust through from the Football League, and there's a number of referees that's going to be given 2 or 3 games this year. He's one of them. And I thought this might have been a game a bit too far for him, but in fairness, he got a grip with it and handled it extremely well.
We believe on this show in mentioning referees who do well as those who do badly. So very quickly through the roll call of Lee Mason, Mike Jones, Roger East, Mike Dean, inevitably Mark Clattenburg, and Neil Swarbrick for their performances at the weekend. I don't think you guys can pick a fault with really anything.
Well, look, I've been critical of Lee Mason because he makes me nervous when he's refereeing. And that must be the same for players. Because he's fussy. He's fussy in that his movement patterns send out a signal to everybody that he's not confident. I'd just like to nail his feet to the ground a bit and for him to get a bit of confidence.
You like to say that, nail his feet to the ground, you don't get in trouble. Social media.
I'm not worried about social media. As far as I'm concerned, that's what you should do. Just
Hackett wants, I can see the headlines now, Hackett wants to nail referee's feet to the ground.
Well, I think in this occasion, I think if he just relaxes a bit, then that message will get across to the players. I think.
Shouldn't somebody be telling him that though?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've tried to tell it him over the years because he's a nervous character. I mean, he's quite a successful businessman. And off the field, he's a wonderful guy. He's got a great personality, a massive sense of humour, and he doesn't carry that onto the football field. I know it's a serious environment.
Players would love that, though, if they knew he had a good sense of humour. In a nice way.
I think that's part of the game, in the same way that players used to say, are you going to keep up with the game today? Or you need to get your backside in
every week,
gear.
you mean? Who's saying?
Well, I think players would have a go, and I think you take that as part and parcel of the game.
Don't worry, he's not on Twitter either. So he's quite safe.
I have to say I'm a mate of Neil Swarbrick, just in case you want to slaughter him, but I know he's had an honourable mention. I was at the game. He did well. Nobody noticed he was there, which isn't that the key?
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why he's got a low level of games this season, because we made that comment, didn't we?
Yeah, but he had that handball thing, didn't he?
Yeah, there's a level of punishment that says accountability to me, that says, okay, you lose a game. If you've made an absolute big clanger, then sit on your hands for a week or go and do a game somewhere else. Not to then hold him to task when you've got a good referee, and there ain't many good referees around.
We're going to talk about sitting on hands in the case of Jose Mourinho and the stadium ban in the second part of the Ref Show. We'll talk about, was the stadium ban right? I'll ask Mark Lawrenson that question. And also the FA, were they right to reveal exactly what Jose Mourinho said to the referee in question, John Moss, to incur that ban? But just finally, what are they doing right what's going right this season? You've talked so much, Keith, about fitness and positioning, getting the selections of referees right. Are people actually listening to you guys, you and Mark and Roger and
I'd like to think that, although I doubt it. I think in reality, I'm seeing an improvement in movement. They're working a bit harder because I think last season in particular, they weren't getting into the right positions. They weren't seeing offences. They looked nervous. I think they were a little bit lost. I don't think they were being given guidance. And I think at the end of the day, I will still remain critical of Mike Riley's lack of leadership, and perhaps at the end of the day occasionally coming out and either supporting his referees, they've had a good weekend, support them, but at the same time, when somebody asks a question, give us an answer.
Be objective.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your take on it, Mark?
I think the thing is that everybody makes mistakes in football, don't they? Players, managers, coaches, referees and stuff. But if you are up with the play and you see it, and you make your decision, you can't argue with it. You might disagree, and you might want to call him everything, all the names under the sun, but you can't you can't sort of make a great case for it, because if he's there and he makes the decision, and he stands or falls by all the decisions he makes anyway, and he says, no, that's the way I saw it, what do you do? You can't do anything. And in the end you go, fair enough.
You talk all the time about selling a decision, don't you?
Well, I think that if you look at the basis of Clattenburg and his ongoing performances at top level, either here or in Europe, then his movement and the amount of effort that he puts into the game gets him into those positions that reduces any form of dissent. And interestingly, you know, we've said this of Michael Oliver, who's out at the World Cup under 17.
Talk about that in the second half, yeah?
And there's some interesting sort of signs for Michael Oliver that I've seen recently.
Excellent. So we'll be back, and yet again, Jose Mourinho will get a mention. with the extinguished Mark Lawrenson and with Keith Hackett. We'll be here to entertain you for another 10 minutes. Do join us for that.